Hi, I'm Danielle Damrell, and I am going to be sharing with you my first car story. I am using a prompt from this book, The Story of My Life. It's been hugely helpful for me in just giving me a template to write about some of the crazy stories all throughout my life. So the prompt for this one is: describe the first car you owned, how did it come into your life, and how did it change your life? Oh boy, I can't wait to tell you about my first car story. My senior year of high school, Janet, my mom, let me pick out a new to me car, and I had found one on Craigslist that looked really promising. It was a Volvo S80 with 80,000-ish miles on it. It seemed really sturdy, and Volvos are typically known as the safest cars in the world. So I thought all would be good. Well, I was wrong. A few weeks after having the car broke down on Wadsworth, the busiest street on the west side of Denver. I had it towed to a mechanic who then explained that most cars have one catalytic converter, but my car had two. And both of them were shot. Janet didn't want to pay a mechanic to fix it, so she just let her husband try to replace them. Well, 3 months later, he finally fixed the car. Mind you, her husband has never been a mechanic for cars, much less foreign cars. I drove the car for only a couple of weeks. It may have been days, I just can't remember, before a traumatizing event scary enough to cause some people to never want to be near a car again occurred. Let me set the scene. I was in between performances for my school's musical. I was an ugly stepsister in Cinderella and was still in full hair and makeup. I was a walking collage of horrifying chaos. Picture this. On top of my head were two separate wigs, red curly wigs, one pinned to each side of my head. A little further down my face, my eyebrows. Do you think they were where normal eyebrows are? Nope, they weren't. They were glued down, covered with stage makeup, the kind that only looks good from a distance, and drawn approximately 1 inch above my actual eyebrows. Oh, and they were black, stark black. A lovely contrast with the red hair. I also had on bright blue eyeshadow and more blush than a drag queen wears. Let's just say it was quite a look. Anyways, during a break in between shows, I offered to pick up a friend who was also in the show. She had an appointment, and I was going to pick her up and bring her back to where we were all hanging out. On the way to pick her up, I started smelling a burning smell, but I thought it must just be fire season or something. It was March. I didn't think much of it, so I just continued to drive the couple of miles to pick her up. There was no smoke that I could see, and the car was still driving, so I didn't think that in any way it was related to my car. When Claire, my friend, got into the car, she also said something about the smell, but I brushed it off, so she brushed it off. She was only in 8th grade, so she didn't know any better either. We drove a couple of miles towards our destination, and all of a sudden, black smoke started billowing out of the dashboard speaker and began filling the car. I then may have mumbled some explicit words while trying to quickly get over to the side of the road. Claire grabbed her bag and jumped out of the car quickly while I just sat there for a few seconds in shock. Claire yelled at me to get out, so without grabbing anything, I got out and made my way to the side of the road. Miraculously, my youth group leader happened to be driving right behind me and called the fire department right away. Claire called her brother and was nearly speechless, except to say something along the lines of, "Something happened, car fire, gotta go," all while crying. And as I was trying to grab the phone from her hand, I realized that Rachel was behind me and I did not need to call 911 because she had it covered. We looked up and watched as the entire front end of our car was engulfed in flames. We began hearing the little explosions as the flames were causing the tires to blow. As luck would have it, this was occurring on the 150-foot section of the road where the major interstate I-70 and the back road we were on, Youngsfield, were level. There was nothing but a small concrete barrier separating us from the interstate. Needless to say, the I-70 came to a screeching halt as our car was taking center stage. A tow truck driver pulled over and ran up to us and said, "How much gas do you have in your tank?" In which I replied, still in full hair and makeup, mind you, "I just filled it up. It's a 22-gallon tank." He looked at us wide-eyed, pointed down the road, and shouted, "Run!" As we ran, tears streaming down our face, I started throwing bobby pins everywhere, trying to get the wigs and the giant bow that accompanied them off of my head as quickly as possible. Within a couple of minutes, although it felt like decades, the fire department arrived. As soon as the chief approached me to further assess the situation, I could tell he was immediately confused, while also trying to hold back from breaking out into complete laughter. I'm sure he was also questioning my identity, my gender identity. It was questionable. The firefighters were able to get the fire out quickly, thankfully, before the flames hit the fuel line. This in itself seemed like a miracle. Claire was able to call her brother back and tell him where we were, which luckily was just around the corner from their house where we were all hanging out. Before the firefighters had even left, the rest of our group, the other cast members from the show, came running down the hill across the street in tears with arms wide open. I'm not even joking when I tell you it seemed like a scene directly from a movie. Unfortunately, many of us lost important belongings that day. We were planning on going back to the school in just a few short hours, so a few purses, wallets, clothes, shoes, etc. were in the car and were either burnt to a crisp or in some kind of toxic liquid that the chief said we couldn't touch for a while and would have to later retrieve from a junkyard. Thankfully, though, both Claire and I escaped with no injuries whatsoever. Only a funny story and some lost belongings, which in my opinion is pretty incredible. We definitely have a lot to be grateful for. This is my car fire story.